You're in the Temple of the Rants, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one is for Christopher Matthews, who says, rant about the shift to digital media and the resulting decline of physical media ownership. Will you miss owning your anime, or are you content with streaming/downloading everything? I've definitely become content with that. It's because, like, owning physical media, I see it as like trying to own a trophy or like to prove some element of, I don't know, identity to yourself. Like for me, it was always like having all of my favorite things surrounding me was like the closest thing I had to something that I could say is like who I am. It's like I identify myself via the things I like because they all say something about me. They paint a picture of what must be on my mind for me to have amassed these particular things. Like what does it say about me that I have this music and this anime and this, manga and all that. And, it would feature very prominently in my videos. I would always be showing off my collection. And, like, I had been very enticed by, like, the otaku room. So if you don't know, there's this idea, this sort of, well, I guess it's just otaku's rooms, but, like, there used to be a fad, sort of people taking pictures of their room being, like, completely covered in posters and, all the walls, the ceiling, everything's covered in posters, and then have, like, racks on racks of figures and, like, boxes stacked to the ceiling, this huge case of DVDs. A lot of people spend a lot of money on the actual, like, shelving units and stuff that they use, and I loved that shit, especially because I'm a fan of sort of visual clutter. I like my environment to be very densely detailed with stuff to look at. I mean, if you watch my old videos, and if you watch the videos that are going to come soon, because now that I'm living in a new house, part of the reason that I've chosen this temple as the new location for these rants is that I'm trying to keep my house kind of secret until it's complete, until I have fully decorated it, and start using it in videos. So, this is the one thing, and I mean, this tapestry in itself is pretty indicative of, like, the love of dense detail and, like, visual clutter, because obviously there's a lot of fucking lines on this thing, it's a pretty complicated image. But yeah, I just liked that idea of, like, covering all the space in pictures and just, like, having this explosively colorful living environment. But again, a lot of it was tied into identity, but actually building one of those rooms, I don't know if other people have this problem as much as I did, but, like, there's not that many things that I truly, like, wish to represent myself. Like, I do like putting up anime posters that just look good, like, regardless of if I even really cared that much about the show. If I just, like the art, that's one thing. But in order to achieve that otaku room, I basically just put up every poster I could get my hands on. Anything that I had, everything was on display. All these, DVDs that maybe I bought just for the hell of it, didn't even really care about the show or like it, but it's still on my shelf, Same with manga. Posters that just came out of Megami magazines, and it fits the slot on the wall, so let's put it up, let's cover up every bit of white space with stuff that I don't even necessarily care about. And so I started to reject that after a certain point where I was like, this stuff doesn't really represent me. I am more than merely what I have on display in my room, and it doesn't reflect enough of me. I want there to be more of a DIY element. I want there to be more aesthetic ideas than just covering everything with anime posters. Again, something like this tapestry that is, I have no relationship to, like, whatever this spiritually represents, but this aesthetic resonates with me, and it's something that I, was interested in having in my home and being able to look at and feel something just from looking at it, because it touches on some kind of, I don't know, abstract feeling I have in the back of my mind. So when I got into anime, and I've told this story before, so if you've heard me talk about this a million times, I'm sorry, but, like, when I first got into anime, the only real way to watch it other than TV was DVDs. Like, sure, 2000 3, I guess there probably were ways to torrent stuff or whatever. I didn't know about it, and it wasn't like a huge fad yet. Streaming was not a thing at all, really. So, when I wanted to watch anime, I pretty much had to buy them on DVD. And so me and my cousin we really like sort of fetishized the experience of going out to the store, looking at every show they had, like, picking what was going to be the thing we could buy that week. So, he had I think like $30 allowance, and so every week he had enough money to buy one DVD, and it's like, this is what our weekend is about, is, buying this DVD and watching it, intermittently with watching Adult Swim on Saturday, or the Cartoon Network Action Block that they had for a little while. So, like, physical media really meant something because it was the access point to the media. When that's not the case anymore, and you're just buying it for the sake of this vague notion of, like, supporting the industry and, having something that represents your favorites and your identity and your collection, it doesn't have the same weight. It's like, well, I could watch this show. What am I actually getting out of owning this physical media, And there's a lot of stuff tied up in buying a DVD that I don't necessarily want to support. There's a lot of, I don't necessarily agree with the way that the industry is run. Even, while some of my favorite shows might come out of this industry, and I'm thankful for that, I don't necessarily want to prop up the business practices that led to this show's creation, or the studios, or the people involved, the particularly, like, dubbing industry and, like, the Western, release publications, I guess is what they would be called. I don't know. Distributors. Like, I don't necessarily want to support those distributors because I don't agree with the way that they're doing things. And, like, sometimes the physical media releases are just not interesting in and of themselves. Like, it used to be that if you bought, like, a full set, you might get the art box, and you have this big piece of art that looks great on your shelf, and it's not just that you're getting the show, but that you're getting a whole experience. There'd be bonus features and, additional visual content that made it worth owning. And you don't get that much of that anymore, When I'm buying just like a Blu-ray thin pack release of a show I could already watch online, I feel like I'm just, the only thing I get out of this is that, again, the vague notion of supporting the industry that I'm not entirely behind. And it doesn't look good on my shelf. I don't really care about that, like, identitarian element of it anymore. And, like, I could just watch the show online, and I'm going to, because Blu-rays also, like, they get overburdened with, all the setup menus, all the advertising that gets put onto the disc that I already paid for, so why am I having to watch ads on top of that? Like, I have a better experience just loading something up on the computer and watching it right then and there, which is always the way I'm going to approach it. So, like, I kind of miss physical media in the sense that I miss what it once was. I miss when you felt like you were really getting something out of it. But, like, even then, when I look back at a lot of the purchases I made, like, for instance, with Haruhi, each of the 4 DVDs was released as, like, a $50 bonus edition that came with a bunch of extra stuff. And most of that extra stuff I don't care about and never did. It's like, it's cheap, chintzy stuff. It's like an iron-on patch for a shirt that I'm never going to use, So, like, those kind of inclusions don't mean much to me, whereas I do think there are other things like the Penny Pony Dash release, which is a really exceptional DVD release where ADV added in, like, a notation feature where you could watch the show with what they call AD vid notes, and, like, it will literally explain all the references to you on screen. Like, that is of something of value added to the show. There was also, like, interview pamphlets in each disc with, like, the creators. So, Shin Onuma and Akiyuki Shinbo. Like, I can get insight on the show. The box is huge. It looks pretty good on my shelf. It's like, I like that I own that. And if there were releases like that, I might be more inclined towards them. But again, it's kind of like, we're also in an era where there's so much to watch, and I want to consume it all. If I were to limit what I consumed to what I could get on DVD, like I did back in the day, as I was forced to back in the day, I wouldn't be able to consume just like a lot of shit that I want to consume. And when you're going through shows so rapid fire and not really stopping and going back and rewatching the same thing again and again, the way that you might if if you were consuming fewer shows, feeling more attachment to them, really throwing down that money because you care about this specific show and you're gonna watch it again and again. I understand that desire to own a bigger part of it, but like, I've bought Blu-rays of shows that came out in the last 10 years that I straight up haven't watched, and I've watched the show several times, and I just have never felt a need to go bust out the Blu-ray. I forget I own them most of the time. I'm comfortable with the size of the collection I have as like a mantelpiece, as something that's fun to look at. I, have sold off most of the stuff that I really didn't care about, so it's more of a tight collection. But even like physical media outside of like actual releases of the media, things like figures and toys and stuff, it just, again, it feels like the main reason to do that is to prop up this sense of identity that is not really necessary for me anymore. I don't need all these figures and stuff to prove how otaku I am, to like show myself that, oh, look at how much I care about anime, I have all these figures. It's like, if you appreciate the figure as an artistic piece in and of itself, then I understand a desire to purchase it. Like, if it will make you happy to see that character, that you care about on your desk, I still, believe in that notion. And, now that I actually have the money that I could afford to, maybe buy some of these again, maybe I'd be willing to, but it has to be something really special. Because when I look at something that I ultimately end up feeling like I bought just to make a statement rather than because I sincerely appreciated that piece, I always look at it with regret, So, like, I just think that, for me, digital media is just, it's way more user-friendly. So it's just always the way I'm going to consume things. And if I had to, if I wanted to support the industry, I would rather do it in a very direct sense of just giving them money. Just giving people money for as a gratuity for the fact that you created something I like. I want you to, to be able to have some money for doing that. But like, I don't want to buy your discs because they're not adding anything meaningful to the experience for me in and of themselves.